Welcome to Needy and Normal. I'm your host, Ashley Levering, mom, wife, and life coach. After hours of coaching and learning from my own life, one thing is clear: meeting your needs is essential for a better life. Here, we'll talk about your needs and not only learn to accept them, but tend to them without guilt. Let's get needy. Welcome back to Needy and Normal. I'm so glad you're here. Today, you are going to hear some very good insight. I'm welcoming Mike Smith to the podcast today. We have been in touch for a little while. We've worked together in the past, but I'm going to let Mike introduce himself and tell you how we are connected.
Excellent. Well, good to see you again, Ashley. So, my name's Mike. As you said, we'll start there. In the day job, I work as part of a bank. We have an aircraft lending program in that bank. And so I provide aircraft loans to successful business owners and individuals throughout the United States. We have a team of 11 that works together and does that. And it's just a blast. And then in addition, I'm a proud husband and father of one with another one on the way, which is a big change from when we first started talking a couple years ago. Which was also fantastic. We met, you and I, through LinkedIn, I think. Had some fellow connections, and I was looking for some guidance and clarity as I was navigating challenges at work and in life. And you helped solidify and clarify all that stuff. So it's just been a fun ride since, and it's good to talk to you again today.
Yeah, you too. I'm sorry. I'm kind of freaking out in live time. Did I know there was baby number 2 on the way?
Well, you do now.
I do now. Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. We're very blessed and very happy.
Big changes.
Very much so. Yeah, I guess that's life in general, though, right? Constant change.
Constant change. Well, and dear listener, if you've been here for a minute and you know a little bit about what I do, change is kind of my jam as a transition coach and helping people move through life changes. So I really I get excited about change, and even though it's hard and can be a little scary sometimes, it's good stuff. It's good. It's an opportunity to expand and grow and learn more about yourself, which I'm pretty sure that's happening, isn't it?
Oh gosh, every day, every day. You're exactly right.
I love it. Okay, so let's go back in time just a little bit, because when you and I worked together, like we said, things were a little bit different. So can you remember the key things that mattered to you then, the things that we worked on, and how much of that is still present now? Like, I know I'm asking you for quite a bit of reflection here, but I kind of wanted to have you take us through then to now. So I don't know, Mike, where do we start?
I think the big thing was taking on new roles and responsibilities at work
Mm-hmm.
in the career. And that shift, you mentioned being in a leadership role for a long time. You know, there's a difference between leadership and management. And those two things interplay. They are not mutually exclusive, as one would say. But they are two distinctly different things. So while I had been working and having aspects of leadership to my job through interacting with people on the team, I had really no managerial responsibilities. And then right around COVID, a little after, I was asked to take on leadership roles, management roles in the company, and that was really scary. It was overwhelming. The concept of imposter syndrome. It was a combination of not feeling like I was worthy or ready for that role, coupled with I was pretty comfortable being an independent contributor and not having to worry about the managerial responsibilities. And then we are a small part of a large organization. So when you take on that managerial responsibility in that organization, there is a level of interplay with senior leadership of the organization that you're just not used to when you step into those shoes. One of the phrases I remember us talking about was trying to fill shoes. And at one point, we just kind of threw the book to the side and said, no, we're just going to go get our own shoes instead of trying to fit in somebody else's. So it was that transition of independent contributor to manager and feeling confident in telling that story and realizing that I wasn't just put in this role because I needed a warm body. There was a need and I had the experience to be able to fill that need and grow, and there was some trust there. So seeing that perspective and have that perspective shift was one of our main focus points, if I remember right.
I remember all of this and the shoes for sure. Let's just go get your own shoes. That was great. Well said. And to clarify for who's listening, especially for the high achievers, which is most, if not all of my clients, and granted there's a collection of listeners, but for those who can really connect to the achieving and leadership positions in the workspace, can you just explain a little detail as the gravity of this role? This was not scary because you had like a couple things you were in charge of. You were in charge of large things and people and a lot of money. Like, I just would love for you to clarify, like, why was that such a big leap?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't know if it was so much the role or the timing in which it occurred. You had COVID and the post-COVID, and history will show through that 2020 to 2022 window, it was almost like the generational torch was passed in a lot of industries and corporations. And I don't know if we fully realize that yet or not, but it was that combination of taking over for people that had been there for 20, 30 years, navigating a very, very dynamic industry and trying to still maintain, you take on a new role. It's not like everything you were dealing with before goes away. You just carry that along with you. So that plate, you need to get a bigger plate because there's just not enough space for everything on there. So that combination really created a challenge. And then you talked about high performance and achievement motivated people. You have this expectation of what success looks like every time. And when you realize there's just not enough time in the day to hit that success level every time, it can really be overwhelming.
That's interesting that well, now you've been away from that time long enough that the perspective might have shifted, like you said, has shifted from what you stepped into, but when, and a little bit of how you stepped into it, being that there's people I remember that the higher ups that had been there for 20, 30 years, and you're coming in with your brand new shoes and
Yeah.
have to kind of figure it out and not restart with your own flair and your own lessons and things that had changed, because everything, like we've established, changes quite a bit. That's interesting. Simultaneously, you were expecting your first baby. You were still kind of merging into this role. And I remember we talked a lot about the life and the work and the balance. And as you're working on your mentality towards work, you're also having to learn how to shift into a different kind of mentality. So what do you remember what that was like? Were you settled in the role enough before life kind of hits with another shift, another change, or was it kind of a lot all at once?
Probably more a lot to handle all at once. You look at the past with rose-colored glasses sometimes. I don't remember being super overwhelmed. I was really excited for Jack to arrive, but now that he's 14 months old, I can't imagine a world without him. So I don't
Mm.
remember being stressed about him coming anymore.
Uh-huh.
But it was a big shift. My wife and I we didn't have any kids before that. We'd been married 3 or 4 years before that. So we were kind of on autopilot, just having fun, a lot of free time. You had all this endless capacity outside of work hours to pretty much do whatever you wanted. I remember before Jack came, I was talking to some coworkers about how it's important to take some time for yourself. And it's easy, just take 30 minutes in the morning and do a workout or whatever, have a cup of coffee. It's easy. Why can't you do that? And then, like 3 months after Jack was with us, I went back to the office and said, I am so sorry that I suggested that was easy to do.
Uh-huh. Things definitely change. Do you feel like, I mean, I don't know, this might be a motherhood perspective, but I think it's a parenthood perspective. Do you think that things that used to bother you, or things you would dwell on or be upset about, or things that could get you upset became a lot more diluted?
Yeah, your entire temperament changes, and I've definitely seen that in my wife too. As a relationship, have learned how to navigate things in a way that we weren't able to prior.
Actually, if you don't mind, would you bring us into your relationship a little bit? Because this work-life balance was really a center point in our sessions. And I'm wondering, moving into that bigger role at work, becoming a family, how have you and Kristen navigated your relationship? Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, it's funny because once we kind of get it all figured out, our second's going to be here, and we're going to have to reset the deck once again.
That's the
But
point,
it
right?
has been unique. You know, she was a teacher. We're blessed enough that she can stay home for a little bit here and help these kids grow before she gets back in the teaching workforce full time. But you look at two industries through COVID that were really impacted. It was education and then the banking industry. And not that people were struggling financially, because a lot were, but a lot of these programs, especially like the PPP program, the government relied upon the banking industry to do that. And then if you're in an industry like ours where you're financing an asset that somebody purchases, there was a lot of money and opportunity and mental change on how you wanted to live your life. So everyone was just insanely busy. So we'd be at home, and she's trying to teach math virtually.
Mm.
And it's hard. Kids don't understand math in person, let alone virtually. Struggling through all that with parents. I'm struggling upstairs with all that stuff at work, trying to figure that all out. And it was so hard to try to make sure we had time for us and to remember that those work components aren't the drivers of life. Uh, and then, you know, right as that all started settling out, she was pregnant, and we started figuring out that, oh gosh, this thing's really going to change a lot. And then Jack came last year, and all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, all those responsibilities really aren't that crazy now when you look at it, because we got this little human that we're responsible for now. And it really, it's something we're still working through, figuring out exactly what do we want that to look like at home? What do we want our home to look like for the three and soon to be four of us? Kind of a point earlier, you know, what does that home success look like for us? So now we're still at this reflection point of what is success and how it's constantly changing, both at work and at home. And there's no point in looking at, you know, what other people have done successfully. It's what's good for me, what's good for us. Is it working? Are we happy and loved and taken care of? And yeah, it's a long-winded answer that didn't actually answer your question at all, but just kind of where I'm at on all that.
I think that's a great answer though, because it's real. It's a version of constant flow. Like, we're always learning, things are going to come up, we're going to have to shift and think and honor our ways and things that work for us. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, because one version of success is not your version of success, or maybe a piece of it could look like your life, but you really have to put together what makes sense for your life based on what you're doing with your time, where you want your time to be, where you want your energy to go. So I thought it was a great answer, and it's unique to everybody. And I'm remembering now, we talked about this transition into, yes, a higher role at work, and learning that, oh, I'm going to be a dad. And it was so much about authenticity for you. I remember that came up a lot. So when you're talking about doing what works for us and for our family, our three and soon to be four, what makes sense for us, that is authentic. That's thinking in terms of success is what we make it. That's what I'm
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's a good recap of that. Thank you.
Someone could be listening right now thinking, man, like I keep thinking I need to fit in a certain cubby for my life to look and feel successful. And there's all these themes of trying to fit the mold, which is why imposter syndrome comes up, which is why we get overwhelmed by life because we're trying to do things other people or other, things we've heard tells us to do. So I think it's great that it's a work in progress. That's the point. But there's been
Yes.
lots of and there's been lots of little successes in there. I know there have. So tell us what's been especially exciting or has felt like, whoa, like this is like a new highlight of my life.
So I got a work one and a home one. Uh, Jack is of the age where he's starting to figure out the house is bigger than the 5 foot radius he's lived in,
Okay.
and it's so fun to watch. Like he found the pile of uh, baby wipes, and you look, turn your head, and all of a sudden there's 10 baby wipes on the floor, and he's inspecting them like he's come up with some sort of scientific discovery. And it's hard to just not laugh. And so
Uh-huh.
it's just so fun to watch that learning and enjoy, and that feels good. That's a win.
Hmm.
And this one's really nerdy, but again, perspective-y stuff. With the turbulence that COVID caused, I was looking at a spreadsheet of what our loan balances were, and I mean, it looked like a roller coaster, just all over the board.
Hmm.
But then I looked down and saw that my baseline, the y-axis, wasn't at zero because I was looking at some just to see trend. And when I dropped it down to zero, all of a sudden, the last 4 years, yeah, there was some noise there, but it looked totally fine. And so it felt good to just look at that and think, huh, how about that? It was a good, I guess the anecdote there is take the time to understand you know, the zoom level you have on what you're looking at in life. Are you zoomed out far enough that you can actually see what the big picture is there? And it's so silly that's a realization now. Should have had that one years ago, but we're here now, so we'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you can't shit on yourself. That's a nasty thing to do. Things change, right? That's a great win though, because you're proving that when you zoom out and pause for a moment and look at things differently or from another angle or just long enough to breathe and slow down for a minute, things can look, I don't know, better. It
Yeah.
can feel better about it. And I always say like every win's a win, take all the wins, even a teeny tiny win, like watching Jack inspect all of the baby wipes. Come
Yeah.
I remember being completely entertained when my son was 6 months old. Like my husband would throw an orange up and down, and he would giggle with his whole body, and I couldn't get enough of it. That was a win, just to
Yep.
get like pure joy in that moment. But you're kind of leading into this slow down, how you actually can shift and change your perspective, whether it's work or at home, actually pausing long enough to look at something differently. Are you using that method, that model more? Is that a helpful tool for you these days?
Yeah, I'm trying. It's a really good point because it's hard. I mean, think about how many distractions come up in the course of a day, and mostly technology related. And I'm not going to get on a pedestal about the the challenges related to the communication technologies we have today,
Mhm.
but it is constant alerts, things, do this next, calendar alerts here, go do that, 10 more emails, whatever. And if you don't intentionally take the time to just pause, it's exhausting. I realized the other day at work the dual screen is like the greatest thing ever, yet it's also the worst thing ever. It's habitual to throw that email up on the other screen and just have it there all day, and that's just like a stress machine. But I realized how often I'll click an email to get open up an attachment or whatever, and in our challenging world we live in these days, it takes 5 minutes for an attachment, or 5 seconds for an attachment to open. And in that 5 seconds, I'm like, oh, I can go do something else here. And then I start digging into that little squirrel moment and look back, and I have my email that finally opens. Like, oh, shoot, I got to finish that. And I don't know, again, like with the spreadsheet Zoom thing that I talked about a minute ago, I'm looking at this email thinking, well, how often do I do this throughout the day? What a terrible way to do my job. Trying to do things because I don't want to waste 5 seconds. And so I'm trying to do three things at once. And in the middle of all that, giving myself no time to even just pause and think, what am I trying to do here?
Okay, but how do you know? How do you know it's happening? I can't even tell you how often this comes up with clients who are trying, I call it the email battle, because it's, you want to get through your emails, but you keep getting distracted, and then you bitch and moan about the emails because you got distracted. And I love how you're like, 5 minutes. Like, I can't just give up 5 seconds. Sorry, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But how do you know? Like, how do you find yourself in that moment where you're like, okay, whoa, 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 hold on a second. I need to pause and figure out where my focus needs to be. I need to slow down. How do you recognize that? Because that's a challenge. And I, like you said, I know you're working on it. It's a work in progress. It's something we're trying. Like, we all try to do a million things at once, but this is a thing that I hear all the time. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, you're working on it, but you get the gist. You understand the practice that you're trying to put into play. So tell me how you notice, okay, whoa, I need to pause.
It's a really good question because I don't have a good answer on what to do about it. Now, how do I notice? I get even jumpier. I can feel it happening when
Okay.
I'm working my two screens at once.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I need a third hand. And that's
Uh-huh.
when I realize, I should probably slow down. Except the problem is, I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this issue. It is like impossible to stop.
Mm.
Once you're on that loop, to
Mhm.
actually pull out of that loop. I think what happened the other day when I observed, I think my computer like crashed on me. So the device wasn't there.
It's like, stop, Mike, right now.
Yeah. So I actually had to sit and think like, what do I do now?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's so funny.
You have so the textbook answer would be force time. With an email work, I call it email workflow because it's just a stack of tasks to do.
Mhm.
But what's it called? It's called email, electronic mail. Back in the day, you used to get a stack of letters and you'd read through the letters one by one and then respond to them.
Hmm.
So some days, if I'm in a good enough headspace, I'll treat my email like it's old fashioned mail, just electronic version, one at a time, and respond intentionally, which is embarrassing to say. On a good day, I'll do that.
But that's a fantastic mind, I hate to call it a game, but it's like a mind switch to say, wait, back in the day, this was a one by one pause and focus activity. I could still do that. I mean, I've got people time blocking like 1 hour for emails, and that's all I'm gonna do. And
Yeah.
sometimes that works beautifully. And then sometimes, like you just said, it's there's so much happening all at once and you can't get out of it. It's like a bad habit. It's like a bad loop you get into. But that's a cool perspective. Are you listening? That's a good idea to think of snail mail. It had to
Yeah.
be different once upon a time.
So you talked about perspective, and that's what this is all about. Everything is all this. What's your perspectives on how you're looking at all this stuff? And just in life. And if you zoom out far enough, use another aviation thing, 10,000 foot view, ultimately, no matter what technology or job exists, we're still humans interacting with each other. So all these things are just mediums of communication to foster further connection. And we can get super caught up in the tasks at hand and the job at hand. But if we really try to stay centered on the thought that it's just people interacting with people, and everybody you interact with has their own challenges and stressors and things that make them happy and scared and anxious. And, you look around at the world and it's an anxious time for everybody. But look at all the cool things we have right now. If you took 10,000 years of human history and brought those 10,000 years of people today, they're like, you have all this? How And it's because we lost the right perspective, right? We haven't slowed down enough to see how wonderful and beautiful things really are. I'm not downplaying all the challenges and pain that are out there because it's real stuff. I'm talking for an individual person that has all those mental blocks where they are unable to see all the good and joy around them. It's like your son and your husband with the orange. The joy's there. You just gotta find it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Very true. I don't know if you've heard, and I try and live by this. I really try, where happiness isn't striving constantly. It's not meant to be like, let me get the big job, let me have the house and the family and the shiny car and the, the nice shoes and all the things. You're defining happiness almost in a inauthentic way, where my perspective, and this might have been parenting doing it to me and me hoping to teach it to other people, is not so much about striving for more and more and more, but living in the moments you have and accepting them in some beautiful way and finding peace in it and finding joy in the moments that are right in front of you, instead of being resistant to it or feeling like it's not enough or it's not good enough. And this is why this topic of how do you define success is so important, because it gets kind of screwy if you don't have that perspective of, well, I just need to slow down for a minute and see what I'm doing. Recognize, to your point, that there are other people going through some stuff, that we're all kind of in this together in some way. And if we want to be successful in life or happy, and like maybe you call that one and the same, that you could just look at it differently. We forget we have this option to change our minds, to change our belief system, to change our mindset. We have that freedom to do that. And a lot of times we're forced into it, like experiencing life and the changes of life, right? Like often we're, oh man, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't see things this way. If I hadn't experienced that challenge, I wouldn't have grown in this way. Like you stepping into that leadership role and thinking, oh, like, am I meant for this? And then realizing, oh, yep, I can rise to the occasion. Look at me. I did it. And now I'm trying to navigate life and do the family thing. But there's opportunity in challenges and changes, and you can change your mindset. You can change your belief. You can change your perspective. Okay, so now you're protecting, I use this term, protecting your peace. I'm getting a good vibe from you on that, where yes, you're doing all the things and life is busy and you're trying to fine tune some of your ways in the office and of course in life too. But I'm getting this feeling like protecting those moments, being more present, recognizing the joys. There's like that inner peace situation going on. I'm hearing that. Is that what's happening with that for you?
It's taking the time. Probably fatherhood did it. I heard a line the other day. Obviously, my son's 14 months old, so it's not like he's totally retaining everything I tell him yet. But I heard a line, and I don't know if that'll change because once he's a teenager, he's not going to listen anyway. But I heard a line the other day: is kids don't always listen, but they're always watching.
Mm-hmm.
So this reality, and even at his age, he's constantly observing. So this recognition of what do I want him to learn? How do I want him to react in these things? What technique should I try to implement so I can be present and more at peace so he can see that? And not just me being at peace, because he should see every side of all the emotions, because just
Mm-hmm.
because we're talking about joy and gratitude, I mean, it's okay to have challenging days still. That's just life. It's called
Mm-hmm.
humanity. It's a beautiful thing. But how can he see the structure of, okay, there's an intentional purpose of I'm going to get up a little earlier so I can get a workout in. Take that time to have that cup of coffee in the morning before I run out the door. Try to be home at a good time. Be present for the family as much as possible. Just those little things from there that can help set yourself up for success, to be as centered as possible. It ain't perfect. I sure as heck don't have it figured out, but that's where I'm at right now.
You've got this mindset on track though. When we're talking, which we kind of mentioned earlier, when we're talking about this balancing act, which is a practice. It's not something that's supposed to be perfect and figured out always, much like your emotions, right? Like they're going to come out, like you said, but there's a balancing act I hear like in progress for you. And a mindfulness, what about that? I don't know, maybe that's putting a bow on what you've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a good word there. It is a good way to describe it because this all interplays with everything. So
Yeah.
kind of go from top down. We talked about what defines success, and we could do 3 days of discussion on what defines success. But I would suggest that if you really want to find success in today's world, you should focus on finding gratitude and happiness first.
Mm,
Appreciation for what you actually have and those that you interact with. And
mhm.
and that then your concern about getting the next thing and the next promotion, whatever, is all just even better. You were already a great baseline. Everything is icing on top from there. So that's a key first point. But to be able to see the reality of those joys and gratitudes in your day to day, you need to have the right focus in your eyes and your mind and your heart. And to be able to do that, you need to slow down and create intentional time to be able to observe what's going on in your world, your externals, and observe your internals. How am I feeling? What are those external stimuli doing to me? Is that a valid response? After that emotion calms down, is that reality still? Am I making up a story in my head? All that stuff.
Mhm.
And that would all be mindfulness. Being aware, self aware, being mindful. What's my reaction? Is it okay? Is it not? What's the perception? What's reality? And all that goes upstream to observing and finding that joy and gratitude, which in turn helps you realize the feeling of success, I think.
That was beautiful. That was remarkable. I love how you put all of that together and gave it intention and direction. And so, yeah, you might be in practice, but you do know a thing or two, Mr. Smith.
Well, I had a good coach.
I conjured it out of you, maybe. It's
There you
been
go.
no, that was great. Thank you for walking us through mindfulness. Yeah, truly. And this perspective, this ability to grab onto that. That's very cool. So now I'm thinking in my head, and even it wasn't even that long ago when we worked together. Was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's been enough time between when we worked together a couple years ago to now where you could pull up a bar stool next to your 2 years ago self and be like, let me tell you some things. Let me educate you.
Yes, definitely.
What would that conversation sound like? Like, just give me a sneak peek because I feel like that would be deep.
Actually, it'd be pretty simple. Have a beer and calm down.
That's it, everybody. That's it.
Yeah,
You
that's
heard
it.
it. Have a beer
I'm
and
out.
calm down.
I'm out of wisdom.
Oh, I love it.
No, that would be pretty interesting because it would be fun to just kind of talk through kind of what I just described. Let's slow down and talk through those emotions and how much of that is perception and how much of that is reality.
Mhm.
And take a minute to look back at what you have accomplished, which is uh, demonstrating what you are capable of in the workplace, and just all those things from there.
Mhm. Yeah, wisdom. It's amazing what you can learn from yourself when you're going through, what life has to throw at you. It's going to happen, and some of it's on purpose and some of it you can't foresee, but allowing yourself to kind of absorb it.
Yeah, very much so. And this is all, it's all work in progress. It's kind of hard to believe it was only a couple years ago
Mhm.
that we were going
Lots
through all
happen.
this. Yeah, kidding. Fatherhood has been a big piece. It has allowed it didn't just upset the apple cart, it just knocked the whole cart over. So
That's good.
probably even broke the cart. So we had to build a new cart.
Mm-hmm.
And in building that, it was a recognition of a higher purpose in life to me, which is to set the next generation up for success in a
Mm-hmm.
way that you can't fully realize until you go through it. And it's letting go quite a bit to be able to do that. I guess you would say, give yourself permission to be able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
something along those lines. And then I think some of it is we just have a kick-ass team at the office that has been able to really grow in their own and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So that big plate that I said I needed a while ago, I don't need quite as big of a one now because we have people that are really good, that are doing a bang up job at everything. So I get to just help them grow now. So some of that was 2 years ago, I knew where I wanted it to be, but I wasn't patient enough to let it get there. And
Mm-hmm.
now here we are, a couple years later, and again, as an outside, if you go outside perspective, you're like, well, no shit, that doesn't happen overnight. You got to
Mm-hmm.
give it time. In fact, if that took 2 years, that's really fast. That was great work. But
Yes.
in the moment, you don't feel it. You're just so controlled by it. It's impossible to see that perspective. But
Mm-hmm.
I think those are kind of the key drivers to that more calm perspective. Now, if Kristen was talking with us right now, she'd be like, "You calm? I don't see it."
It's a work in progress.
That's right.
But you brought it full circle because you're talking about if you can pause and zoom out and think about a perspective shift in the moment when you're in it, it's different than, when you let it kind of consume you and get you all worked up. This was your one of your goals when we were talking originally was to not only move into this position and be authentic and trust yourself through it and make the different decisions that you needed to make, but your main goal was to coach and manage your team to thrive and
Yeah.
to take the things they needed to do and run with it. And you had to let go a little bit. You had
Yeah,
to
it's scary.
let them,
I did.
and
Yep,
you did it.
it did.
You did
And
it.
it was worth it.
That's cool. Well, that's a great example because whenever someone's like in the muck, they're really in the messy middle. I my last episode, if you haven't listened to the last episode, I talk about, maybe it's 2 episodes ago, I talk about what transition is and how it's in 3 phases, right? You have something has to end. And for you, it was the position that you knew. And that
Yep.
finished. And you moved into the next part of the transition period, which is phase 2, which is the messy middle. I call it the disorientation phase, right? And when you're in that, your perspective is so in it. You're so in the muck and you're stuck in it. It's really hard to see. That's usually where your clarity is a little foggy. This is when people come to see me, let's be honest. When you're trying to figure it all out, you're trying to make decisions. And what I always try and help people understand is that if you could just slow down for a minute and think about a year from now, 2 years from now, and I use the word when you've achieved these goals, when you did the thing you set out to do, when things feel less chaotic, go there, right? Like take yourself into that perspective. It's kind of a larger version of the perspective shift. And when you get all riled up about so many emails, it's like, is this going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 years?
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's not.
yes, exactly right. No, that's a great example of how that normal cycle looks with anything like that. It's perfect.
Yeah, but you gotta pause. You gotta pause to steal yourself away from that moment, which you are
Yep.
practicing more than you were 2 years ago. Look how much has changed. I love it.
Imagine what 2 years from now will look like.
But truly, that's the thing. And you see all these quotes online, like, yourself from 10 years ago is thanking you and is in awe or proud of you. It's true. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago. You're not supposed to be. You're supposed to continue to move forward
Correct.
and grow, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love your insights. I think there's going to be someone listening who is feeling connected to what you've touched on today. I mean, when we're in this world of striving for success and facing changes, life-changing, mind-changing changes, like becoming a parent and leading a team and trying to do all the things, what would you say is the biggest message, like for someone listening who was in your shoes a couple of years ago? Like, what do you want the biggest takeaway to be from our conversation?
Whatever you're going through, it's not forever. It sounds so textbook, so easy to say on the outside, but it really is true. So whatever you're going through, it's not forever, and just keep persevering through it. Because on the other side of that, as long as you do that, you're going to grow strength and skills, and you're going to see new things because of what you've gone through. So embrace that challenge and just take it in and grow with it, because that's all that is. That discomfort, that emotional anxiety and stress, some of that is just your mind and your emotions stretching and getting stronger and getting better. And so you'll come out a better person on the other side. So just hang in there.
I love it. Thank you for talking with me today, Mike, and sharing your journey and your insights and your mindfulness lesson.
Oh, it's always good talking.
Yeah, this is great. All right, Mike, take care and good luck and best wishes to you and the family with the newbie on the way. I'm so excited for you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
See you.
Thank you for listening today. I'm so excited every time someone in a very successful place in their careers can be vulnerable and show their authenticity. And I hope you find meaning in this conversation. And if it struck you in any particular way, let me know. I would love to hear what part of our conversation really hit home for you, and please share it with someone who you feel would find some benefit in listening to a conversation like this as well. And remember, your needs matter because you matter. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Needy and Normal podcast. Please take a moment to leave me a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. To learn more about today's guest or content, find me on Instagram at ABL Life Coaching. Or if you're interested in coaching, visit ablifecoaching.com. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.